From Mistakes to Master. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another session here at the Easy English Stories Home, your go-to channel for mastering the English language in a way that's practical, engaging, and fun. We're diving deep into one of the most powerful ways to learn English, or any language really, and that is through mistakes. Yes, you heard that right. Mistakes are not your enemy, they're your best teacher, and by the end of this session, you'll see how every stumble can actually bring you closer to fluency. Before we dive in, I'd like to remind you to subscribe to our channel and share it with your friends, colleagues, or anyone who might find it helpful. Support us by hitting that subscribe button so you never miss a video, and share your thoughts in the comments section. All right, let's get into it. I know many of you might have been told that making mistakes in English is embarrassing, or maybe you felt shy about speaking up because you didn't want to get things wrong. But I'm here to tell you that's the wrong way to think about it. In fact, some of the most successful English learners will tell you they learned more from their mistakes than anything else. So, let me take you on a journey where we embrace those little slip-ups and turn them into stepping stones to success. Let me start by sharing a story. I remember a student of mine, let's call him Alex, who was learning English for the first time. He was brilliant, with a sharp mind and an eagerness to learn, but there was one problem. Every time we had a conversation, Alex would freeze up whenever he thought he might make a mistake. He'd hesitate, pause, and often lose track of what he wanted to say. This constant fear of getting things wrong was holding him back more than the mistakes themselves. Alex's problem is common. According to research, over 70% of language learners experience some form of linguistic anxiety. That's just a fancy term for being afraid to make mistakes while speaking. And it's no wonder, right? We've been conditioned to think that perfection is the goal. But here's the truth. Language learning, like any skill, is messy. It's imperfect. And it's in that imperfection that you find growth. Now, I'll be honest, Alex wasn't an exception. He wasn't a special case. He was like so many of us. You see, when we were young children, we didn't care about making mistakes. Think about a toddler learning their first words. They mix up their tenses, use the wrong vocabulary, and yet, they're still learning at an astonishing rate. Why? Because they're not afraid of getting it wrong. They're just focused on communicating. That's the mindset we need to bring back. As we move forward in this episode, I want you to think about your own journey. When was the last time you hesitated to speak English because you were afraid of getting something wrong? When was the last time you let that fear stop you from practicing? It's time to let that go. So how did Alex turn things around? It didn't happen overnight, but one day he made a shift. I remember we were in the middle of a conversation, and instead of freezing, he made a mistake. He used the wrong verb tense, but instead of panicking, he corrected himself and kept going. It was a small moment, but it was huge for his progress. You see, mistakes are feedback. They tell you where you need to focus your attention. In Alex's case, that mistake showed him that he needed to work on his past tense verbs. He spent the next week studying them, using them in conversations, and yes, making even more mistakes. But each time, he got a little better. I'm reminded of a study by Cambridge University that found language learners who are willing to make mistakes learn 30% faster than those who are afraid to try. That's right, 30%. Imagine how much faster you could improve if you embraced your mistakes instead of avoiding them. And Alex? Well, a year later he was speaking confidently and fluently, holding conversations without hesitation. His secret wasn't some magical language program. It was his willingness to learn from his errors. It's not just about speaking, though. Writing is another area where mistakes can lead to breakthroughs. Let me tell you about Maria, another student of mine. Maria was terrified of writing in English. She was always worried about grammar, sentence structure, and punctuation. In her first few assignments, her writing was stiff and formal because she was so focused on not making mistakes. But I encouraged Maria to write freely, to let go of her fear of mistakes. At first, she resisted. "What if I write something that doesn't make sense?" she asked. And I told her, "That's okay. That's where you learn." After a few months of consistent practice, something amazing happened. Maria's writing became more natural, more fluid. Yes, she was still making mistakes, but they were different kinds of mistakes, subtle ones that showed she was experimenting with more complex sentence structures. And as she kept practicing, those errors became fewer and fewer. Today, Maria writes beautifully in English, and she's no longer afraid of her mistakes. Instead, she welcomes them. One thing I always tell my students is that mistakes are only useful if you get feedback on them. This is where teachers, language partners, and even technology can play a big role. There's a great quote I love: "You can't correct what you don't know is wrong." And that's why feedback is so important. When you make a mistake and someone points it out, it's not criticism. It's an opportunity to grow. For example, one of the most common mistakes learners make is with prepositions. These little words like in, on, and at can be tricky, but with the right feedback, you can master them. Let's say you wrote, "I live in a farm." Your teacher or language partner might correct you and say, "It should be on a farm, not in a farm." Now you know the difference, and next time, you'll be more likely to get it right. And here's a tip. Whenever you get feedback, write it down. Keep a notebook or a document on your computer where you track your mistakes and the corrections. This way, you're not just learning passively, you're actively engaging with the material. Over time, you'll notice that the mistakes you used to make start disappearing. To wrap things up, let's go back to our original theme: from mistakes to mastery. The key takeaway from today's session is this: mistakes are not the enemy. They are your guideposts, showing you where you need to focus, helping you grow, and ultimately bringing you closer to mastery. So, the next time you make a mistake in English, whether you're speaking, writing, or even just thinking in the language, remember this: each mistake is an opportunity. Embrace it. Learn from it. and keep moving forward. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope this session has inspired you to rethink the way you approach learning and to see your mistakes in a new light. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and share it with others who might benefit. And as always, feel free to leave a comment sharing your own experiences. Have you made a mistake that turned into a learning moment? Let us know. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and remember, your mistakes are the path to mastery. Take care.